here in the basement of Life Outreach International in the green room still. Um, it's been it's been a difficult time recently in the Middle East, and I know that U.S. news tends to underreport what's going on in Israel, but it's been very active, and I've been wanting to do a program to update you about what's going on and let you hear from someone on the ground. And so I'm honored today to have Yoni Yagodovsky with me. He is with an organization called Magen David Adom, if I pronounce that correctly. It's an organization that's done a lot of good work in Israel over decades, and Yoni has been on the front line of situations there in Israel for quite a while, and he is live with me. Yoni, it's great to have you here on Life Today Live.
Thank you for having me.
So, for those who may be not aware of what's going on, give us a little bit of an overview of what you've been dealing with. How long has it been? Close to a month now that it's really flared up?
Well, the actual rockets that are being fired constantly from Gaza towards Israeli communities, this has been going on for this is the 10th day of this escalation. We did have a few, gifts that were thrown to us, like we call them kind of gifts, over the last few weeks, but they didn't cause an escalation. But unfortunately, since rockets were fired last Monday, even towards Tel Aviv and Jerusalem from Gaza, Israel had to respond, and that created a big ordeal with the ongoing firing of missiles from different ranges from the Gaza Strip towards Israeli civilian communities. We have already 13 people that died and a high number of people that were injured from the Israeli civil sector. In addition, already an hour and a half ago, and a couple of days ago, we witnessed also that the Hezbollah in Lebanon, probably the Hezbollah in Lebanon, are shooting rockets from Lebanon to the northern part of Israel. That happened, as I mentioned, an hour and a half ago, with minor damages, a few people that suffered from stress disorders. But the overall situation in Israel is kind of a combat zone, especially in the targeted cities like Ashdod, Ashkelon, Sderot, Be'er Sheva, the kibbutzim and moshavim that are in the western Negev, etc., and even in central Israel like Rehovot, Rishon LeZion, the outskirts of Tel Aviv, the outskirts of Jerusalem, as I mentioned, that suffered these type of attacks a week and 2 days ago.
All right. So I should probably tell my audience this is pre-recorded, so it's actually Wednesday evening when we're talking in Israel. So by Friday, it's been going on for getting close to 2 weeks. When you talk about rockets being fired from Gaza and now from the Palestinian areas, if I'm getting the geography right, how many a day are we talking?
Well, the overall in numbers, according to the last publication by the Israeli Defense Forces, it's about close to 4,000 rockets
A
that
day?
were fired in total.
Total, okay.
It moves between 300-400 a day to 100 and 150, depends. It's not consistent, but the overall total is we're getting close to 4,000 missiles in 10 days that were fired from the Gaza Strip towards Israel.
And for audiences here in the U.S., Canada, even other places in the world, can you imagine the reaction of your country if that many rockets were being fired over your border? I there's a lot of criticism, frankly, in Europe and even unfortunately in America of Israel's response, um, which baffles me. But what has been the response of Israel to try to protect their people?
Well, first, fortunately, Israeli Defense Forces are capable and are doing a fantastic work. The Iron Dome missile system is working fantastically with about 90% success in causing the explosion of the missiles on air, but 10% of missiles out of 4,000 that are falling down on the ground, sometimes in urban areas, in residential areas, etc., do cause first a lot of damage, could cause a lot of panic. And by the way, just a couple of days ago, there was a direct hit in the streets of Ramat Gan, just next to Tel Aviv, that caused one fatality, and several people that were injured. And I do not believe that any civilian should live in a war zone. And Israel is pretty much closed. Part of the areas from, let's say, northern to Tel Aviv, all the way down south, including Jerusalem, there's no school system. Nothing is really open unless you go to buy groceries or medications, etc. People who can go to work, if there are sufficient sheltering or bomb shelters in their areas that they're working. If not, they have to stay at home. And since young kids are not going to school, the parents must stay with their children, and the level of stress within the overall population is high. We put our safety in the abilities of the Israeli Defense Forces, and we hope that this escalation will come down soon.
Yeah, I can't even imagine living, I mean, in that kind of situation. And I think most people around the world can't imagine it. It just to give people a little perspective, tell people what Magen David Adom is and what you do and what you've been doing for many years personally.
So Magen David Adom is an organization that within a couple of weeks will be marking 91 years of activities here. It was established by a group of volunteers in 1930, received its official status from the Israeli parliament a year and a half after the War of Independence and the Declaration of Independence of the State of Israel by law. And we act according to the Magen David Adom law that was legislated in 1950, where the Israeli national pre-hospital emergency medical system, we run the blood services system of the State of Israel. We are the Israeli Red Cross Society, and we are a non-governmental organization, meaning we are a public statutory organization that activates more than 30,000 volunteers that are highly trained, highly capable, and a very small number, give or take around 3,000 employees, working throughout the country in Jewish and non-Jewish communities with volunteers from the entire sector of the spectrum of the Israeli society, designating their daily abilities and skills to assist their fellow men. Wherever they are, all over the country, we are responding to any medical emergency, whether it's heart attack, respiratory issues, stress disorders, car accident, etc. And in times of escalation or in response to terror attacks, we respond and assist our fellow Israelis within the borders of Israel. We also provide international assistance and assist other countries in need, whether it is in training or with physical arrival of our team members that are trained within the Red Cross movement to assist other countries and other people in need after natural disasters, etc.
So when you have this type of situation that's going on now, I'm assuming that that means you guys are working around the clock to respond with rockets raining down in Israel. Yes,
That is correct. I can give you an example. We
please.
have a fleet of about 1,300 ambulances. We have a fleet of, give or take, about 550 emergency motorbikes. We call them medicycles. All of these vehicles are manned over the last 10 days. All of them, with volunteers and employees, 24/7, responding to any emergency in any street in Israel, in any neighborhood, in any city, in any community, whether it's anywhere. We are there within a few minutes, thanks to the outstanding abilities of our volunteers and of our employees.
So you guys are as frontline as it gets. I mean, and so for my audience watching, you got to understand that you're hearing directly from someone who is witnessing everything that's going on there in Israel right now. You made when you were just describing what your organization does. You mentioned Jews and non-Jews alike. What is two questions? Number one, your volunteers, what do they look like ethnically? And secondly, the people that you help, what do they look like ethnically?
Well, they look like you and me, basically. I mean,
But I mean,
there are
you
people,
you've got Jews and Arabs volunteering together to help Jews and Arabs wherever they're at. You don't
correct,
discriminate, correct?
correct. Well, the fact is that when a person is in need, it's a person in need, and we are there to assist. And over the years, Magen David Adom was able to train and get into its ranks people from, as I mentioned, whether Christians or whether Muslims or Druze and Orthodox Jews, extremely Orthodox Jews, secular Jews, people who live in kibbutzim and moshavim, and people who live in the cities, and are all channeled to one thing when they are part of Magen David Adom, is assisting their fellow neighbors, friends, whenever they need them. So it is, let's say, natural in Magen David Adom to have at the same station a group of people, men and women, that wear a kippah or a hijab, and they work together on the same ambulance, on the same mobile intensive care unit, and respond to any community where there is a person who needs medical assistance. And by the way, this mixture of people you will see in many other places in Israel. Of course, in the medical sector, you will see it all over the hospitals in Israel, but you will also see it in the private sector. Anywhere you will see people that can live together and can work together and have good relationships between them. And unfortunately, every now and then you can witness, and I'm talking about within Israel, Israeli citizens, you can see in all parts, people are more militant, who are more restless, etc. And that creates sometimes friction, and we do our utmost to keep it out of our facilities and our professional system.
And I think that's so admirable. That's the hope for the world, frankly, but especially for the Middle East, which seems the sectarian fighting. It just seems endless. And I wish all the Middle Eastern countries would be like Israel in that regard and work together and come together. We're talking to Yoni Yagodovsky. He is the Director of International Relations for Magen David Adom, and I'll show the website again. That's the website. It's savinglivesinisrael.org, and you can check it out to see what they're doing and help them out if you are so inclined. They're very busy right now, obviously, but always tending to the needs of the people, regardless of their background, their ethnicity, their religious belief, they do the work to help save lives, and that's a beautiful thing. Do you know, uh, Yoni, what started this latest flare up a week ago Monday? Was there any one particular thing?
I think there were several issues that are involved in the overall political situation, both in Israel and in the Palestinian Authority, which are separate but still have some kind of influence among them. There's a certain instability in the political life in Israel. We had four elections within in the period of two years, and we still do not have a full functioning government after the last elections. In the Palestinian sector, they were supposed to have elections for the Palestinian parliament and leadership, and Mahmoud Abbas, who is the leader of the Palestinian Authority, decided not to conduct them for a variety of reasons. Then there were issues around mosques during the Ramadan, and that escalated additional, let's say, tension, etc. And altogether was kind of a trigger to for the Hamas in Gaza to, let's say, make a sound, to make an appearance. And by making that appearance, Israel had to respond. Israel didn't want to cause any escalation. And there were, I know that there were, we all know from the media that there were a variety of attempts to, let's say, calm down everyone. But once they begin to shoot towards the heart of Israel, towards Jerusalem, towards Tel Aviv, and other areas in Israel, the Israeli government had to respond, and that created
Sure,
this situation that we
sure.
are living in at the moment. May I add one more thing,
Yes.
which I think is for me, is very important as an Israeli, as a person who works in Magen David Adom for many, many years. We are prepared as an organization. We invest a lot in preparations, in training, etc. But we have excellent partners that keep us going. And these partners live in the United States. And people who support us through American Friends of Magen David Adom and etc., give us the ability to be prepared because we receive hundreds of new ambulances, mobile intensive care units, medical supplies. Our blood services are being built. The new blood bank facility of the State of Israel, by the way, it's being built with 3 floors underground as a bomb shelter in order to protect all the blood inventory of the State of Israel. And we are getting close to finish it within the next 6 months, is all funded by fantastic people from America. And no doubt that anytime we reach out our hand and provide medical assistance, we know that we can do it thanks to the generosity of our supporters in the US. So you are living partners in every hour, every minute of our daily work here in Israel.
And I can't express how grateful I am to live in a country where we're able to do that, and have done that. SavingLivesInIsrael.org is where you can go to help. You can fund the blood bank. You can fund an ambulance. I know from some past associations I've had. Um, have you seen anything change in Israel or in the Gaza Strip, or even broader, with the transition from the Trump administration to the Biden administration?
I can't really tell.
Okay.
I can't tell definitive if there was any meaningful change in terms of the overall, what you call our daily life and the overall, because we had our issues with the Hamas for many, many, many years. It's not the first escalation and so on. And there are a lot of political issues. Um, and I think that even though the Biden administration is already functioning for quite a while, it's still a short time, relatively. Uh, I do hope that as an Israeli, as a person who, since I was 16, is doing his best to assist his fellow man, that there will be a political solution for the benefit of both sides, and we will be able to live more normally. Let's say while I was listening to you, I imagined, let's think about rockets being fired. These people say that New Jersey is kind of the size of Israel, or Israel is kind of the size of New Jersey. Let's say that from New York, missiles would have been shot to New Jersey. Nobody can imagine that. And that's the situation that we are in. And we definitely hope that we will have much less work. We don't like to work a lot.
Hmm.
And that we will be able to live safely, peacefully with our neighbors.
Are you seeing any influence from Iran ramp up or anything? Because I mean, my understanding is that Hamas especially has some connections to Tehran. Are you seeing any of that?
There's no doubt, and that's again according to the Israeli media, etc. There's no doubt that there's deep involvement of Iran and even a support to this escalation and many other things that are happening in our region. Iran is not friendly. Iran doesn't want Israel to exist, and Iran is an enemy. And again, unfortunately, we just witnessed a couple of days ago that a drone that was intercepted in the north of Israel that probably left Syria and was flying towards the border between Jordan, Israel, and Syria, and it was intercepted by the Israeli Defense Forces. And it is kind of pretty clear, according again to the experts, that Iran was behind that flying element. And I'm sure that it was not flying towards Israel for peaceful reasons.
Boy, 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 boy. All right. Well, I first of all, thank you for the work that you're doing over there and modeling what it looks like to get along and to love your neighbor. Um, that's a beautiful thing. How, obviously, Americans, Canadians, the others watching around the world can go online, savinglivesinisrael.org, and support the work that you're doing. But is there anything else that we can do from such a distance to support you, to support Israel, to help in some way?
I think that in addition to what you spoke about, I'm sure you know that there's a big wave, an anti-Israeli wave within the social media, especially, but not only. Also in demonstrations in various places that are completely anti-Israeli, and some people even, I'm not sure if it's correct or not, even call them the new type of anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I think you're correct.
And I think that this type of support for people who care about human people, who care about the fellow men who do care about Israel, should speak up and should support Israel against this BDS activities and against this new wave of people who are doing all they can in order to harm Israel in any way they want. And a loud voice, a clear voice of support is always needed.
Yeah, and I know here in the United States, we have people in Congress who are anti-Semitic. Just there's no way around it. And if you happen to live in one of those districts, you need to vote them out. And the rest of us keep pressure on your congressman and senator to support Israel. They are our best friends in the Middle East. They are modeling what a civilization should look like, and they are under attack. Hundreds of rockets currently over the last week and a half raining down their Fortunately, they are able to defend themselves quite a bit, but that hadn't stopped innocent blood from being shed. And when there are injuries, when there is harm done, Magen David Adom is there as an organization, and they don't care if you're Arab, Jewish, Christian, or where you're from. They are there to help you, and that right there, I think, says it all. If you want to know who is in the right, well, the country that is willing to help anyone, regardless of where they're from, even when maybe some of those don't, have good intentions towards them. This is a clear moral difference that we see going on right now. And so, Yoni Yagodovsky, I appreciate you sharing. Is there anything else you want to add? Anything else we need to know? Your time and your insight has been amazing and valuable today, and I thank you for that. Anything else you want to share?
Just to thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for supporting Magen David Adom and supporting Israel. And we all hope for better days. And happy to speak with you anytime again. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate all of you guys watching. That music was loud. Appreciate all you guys watching. We've got more great interviews next week, so I invite you to come back. Hit share. We need to be aware of what's going on in our world, and we need to stand up for Israel. So we'll see you again next week here on Life Today Live.